My office is in a 1918, what was a 1918 fire station.
Oh, very cool.
And we have a little campus of buildings. My wife and I operated an art center here for 10 years, and it's a very mixed neighborhood, low income, um, and it became the base of operations for what I do.
Oh, that's very cool. Um, listeners, that voice is Alan Govenor, filmmaker, photographer, and author who has a new movie, "Quiet Voices in a Noisy World: The Struggles for Change in Jasper, Texas." Is that where your office is? Is that or is it nearby? Or?
Now, I am in East Dallas at the present time, but I also work a lot in New York City. So we
Okay.
also base there. So I do a lot of different things, one of which is make movies. And I've had a very free-form career. This movie, which is called Quiet Voices in a Noisy World, The Struggle for Change in Jasper, Texas, like many of my projects, incubates over years. I
Mm-hmm.
went to Jasper, Texas for the first time in 1996, and it was related to the work of a photographer there, Alonzo Jordan, who's part of the subject of this movie. Alonzo Jordan had died in the 1980s. My wife, artist Khalida Doolan, and I had founded the Texas African American Photography Archive in 1995. We were one of the few independent archives to be funded by the National Archives in Washington. And we were doing, at this point, 3 years into the project, an internship program and on-site work with historically Black colleges in East Texas. And at Wiley College, which is the oldest historically Black college west of the Mississippi, I was working with a historian, Lloyd Thompson, and his wife, Bertha, was from this little town in East Texas called Jasper. And through her, I met the widow of this photographer. And he had been a barber. He was uh, a true community person. He was an
Mm-hmm.
elder of the church. He was an icon. He photographed all the little towns within a 70-mile radius of Jasper. And a storm had ripped off the roof to his studio, which had been essentially his barber shop. And I met with Mrs. Jordan, a couple of her relatives, and they gifted that collection to Documentary Arts, which is a nonprofit I started in 1985 with the mission to broaden public knowledge and appreciation of the arts of different cultures in all media. And that's what we've done over the last 40 years. So this is a very kind of watershed year for
Yeah.
me that I do. I've never been a full-time executive director of this organization because I believe that it should be project driven. So documentary arts for decades has been a loosely connected group of like-minded people, people who are project oriented, people who want to have sustained interaction with their subjects. So going back to this movie, the movie as it developed, became something different than what I guess I originally thought I was going to do, which was to focus on this Black photographer. Well, in 1998, there was the lynching of James Byrd in Jasper, Texas.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
an African American man who was chained to the back of a pickup truck and dragged down a country road until he was beheaded and his body was
Oh,
in a cemetery. And it was one of the first times, if not the first time, that anyone who was white was given the death penalty for killing someone that was Black. So this was very traumatic for this community. And over the years, I've stayed in touch with people in the community. And as time has passed, there's this group of volunteers who are in their 70s and 80s who've been fairly successful, African American businessmen and other professions, and they've decided that they wanted to reclaim their own history.
Yeah.
And this time in the politics of erasure, they are quiet voices. They put up signs on the side of the road. They have built three little museums that focus on their community, show the photographs of Alonzo Jordan. They've created a scholarship fund for Black kids in their community. They've given now over $200,000 in scholarships. So it's a remarkable group of people, and it's a very powerful story against the backdrop of virulent racial violence in this area.
Oh, that's brute. Like I feel like a lot of people feel that kind of violence isn't that recent in our history. I mean, the '90s. I like to think of the '90s as being like just the other day, but it's a few years in the past. But it's not that far removed from today, and to keep that
Well,
story prominent is so important right now.
it is. It's a very important story for today's world. I mean, much of my work is very issue driven.
Hmm.
And I mean, this year for me, in addition to this film, um, several different parts of my life have flourished. And so in January, there was a 50-year survey of my photographs at the
Oh wow.
University of Texas Museum. In April, May, there was the world premiere of a musical of mine called Stompin' at the Savoy. And it's based on a children's book of mine. In May, there was a novel of mine that was published. In June, there was a nonfiction book I did on tattoo that was published. In September, there was another book on tattoo. And uh, most recently, this exhibition just opened September 20th at the Center for Photography at Woodstock. And they published a book about 4 decades of my work. And there's a book that's being done by Aperture on the Texas African American Photography Archive. I make artist books. I have two artist books that were published this fall. So it's an amazing year. It's humbling. It's been very daunting trying to put my life and career in perspective. And this film is very important to me because it really defines an approach that I've had of sustained interaction. It's just like I didn't just show up in Jasper, get these photographs. I stayed in touch with the people. And
Hmm.
what we're doing now is we're giving back a digital archive of all the photographs from that photographer to this community.
And that's one of those things that I love that's something that you and hopefully more people are doing is archiving media in general. Is I think we tend to not think of photography the same anymore because it's selfies and there's 400 photos on my phone that I'll never even really look at. But there's a total different approach when you have to set up a camera and a flash, and it's not just a throwaway image, and they can hold so much information that if it's not cataloged in some way that we can just be lost forever.
Well, I think one of the key words that you just said is hold. I mean, photographs are objects, but now they're digital media
Mm-hmm.
largely. People do make prints from their digital photos,
Yeah.
but there's something about making a photograph that comes out of a darkroom that has a tangible quality
Uh,
that is profound.
I agree, and it's so difficult because we're in such a time where technology is advancing so fast, and I don't want to be the person to kind of poo-poo any advancement that comes out, but back when I was in school, like when we took photography class, you would have to develop your film and then go in the dark room and do the whole process, and those chemicals, and it felt it felt more like putting yourself in it opposed to just kind of going in and clicking a filter and be like, no, I don't like that filter, and clicking another filter. um yeah, I don't, in like my friends and even my kid, they draw on a tablet, but to me there's still something really that I feel more connected, that if it's a piece of paper and my hands are dirty with paint and ink, and I feel more involved in the process. I don't know if that's kind of what I'm getting at.
Well, I think so.
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying, but for me, it's always been a mix of different kinds of media. I mean, for me, one of the operative metaphors in my kind of visual internal lexicon is the Duchamp painting, Nude Descending a Staircase,
Hmm.
which is based on the Moirage kind of photographs, that's kind of sequential movement, but seeing different facets of reality. So I make films, I write books, I write poetry, I've written plays. I I make lots of photographs. It's a big part of what I do. And all of these, and I guess I I am an interdisciplinary artist in terms of what I do. It's difficult to fit within a one description. So my work over the years gets coverage in a lot of different ways in terms of the things that I do. At this point in life, which is not an easy undertaking, even for me, because so much of my work is impulse driven. I have this creative sensibility. I started my first book when I was 18 years old, but I was also working on a collection of poems. And the book that I started when I was 18 uh, was published this year. It's called Come Round Right.
Oh, that's funny.
And it's a coming of age story, and it's a paean to the this very, I think, very important moment in American history when the Vietnam War was raging and the idealism of the 1960s was losing ground to frustration, anger, and violence. And sadly, that's where we're at today. It's still going on. I grew up in the peace and love world in my head and in my presence. I was probably a little too young to be an official hippie, but I aspired to be one in a certain
Yeah.
way. But then by 1971, things had changed. There was this kind of reached a certain pinnacle, and then it became something else. And this book looks at that and that journey in my life. So it took a lot of years to put it in perspective. Come Around Right is set in the fictional present of 1970 and the fictional past of 1970 and the fictional present of 1971. So the book is interwoven with it's the past and the present, and eventually they joined. But it's a harrowing story.
I totally get that um need to kind of create in many different ways. That's kind of very much how I've always been. When I was younger, I played a handful of instruments and I drew, and I was in theater. And then, I've been kind of getting back into music by organizing some music events. And, I've dabbled in writing, not that I'd put anything out that I've written, but to me, it kind of scratches that same itch to bring something into the world that didn't exist. But I think part of it is because I tend to get like really bored if I don't have a bunch of different things going on. Is that part of it for you, or like why do you feel the need to do so many different types of things?
Well, I mean, the subject of what I'm experiencing reveals itself in different forms. So I have a very kind of I have a very free form life
Hmm.
within a superstructure that is it all happens. So I start my day, I listen to the same piece of music going to my office every day. And it's about
Oh,
the time that from leaving our apartment to my office. It's a Spanish dance by Segovia, Asturias. And it is a piece I listen to. I get to my office about 8:30, 8:15. I walk. I walk 5 to 6 miles a day.
yeah.
Then I have, it's like your approach to doing this podcast
Hmm.
is that it merges. That's the way my day works. Now, I sometimes, I like everyone else, I have a life and, maintenance issues of repairs and the countless other things of day-to-day life. But my creative life is free form. And I'm very, well, I work in a lot of different media. I only work at one at a time.
Yeah.
And so yes, I might be working on a nonfiction book in the morning, and then I have lunch with my wife. We have a little lunchroom in this old fire station, and then in the afternoon, I'll work on something else. And for the last several years, I work on poems at the end of the day. I get in my car, I listen to John Coltrane's ballads, and I'm home.
That's I I'm very envious, um because I would also say my life is very free form, but that is more of a recent thing. And you know, prior to COVID, I had a 9 to 5 job in a cubicle, and before that, I worked retail, and the house, 2 kids, 2 cars, that kind of whole thing. And so I've kind of found this freeform life later in life, and it's a bit of a struggle because I feel like sometimes people my age, where it's kind of like it's a huge shift and like a change in lifestyle, where people my age are kind of like, you know, I hate saying this because people say it to me and it kind of pisses me off, but the whole get a real job, or like, what's your and it's like, why does my
I
real
got
job?
that.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you. It's so funny that you say that because, and I had girlfriends when I was in my, teen years and, well, not my teen years, but more in my 20s. It was, I'd meet the parents, and the
Yeah.
parents, I could tell, were thinking, when are you going to get a real job? But, the reality is I was on a track to become a university professor. I mean, I have a PhD. I
Yeah.
came to Dallas in 1980 because I had met someone. I was in graduate school in Austin in the 70s, and he was starting this interdisciplinary program at the University of Texas at Dallas. And I was teaching part-time at an art college in Columbus, Ohio. And had gotten my first NEA grant, which was somewhat controversial, and I needed a change and my friend said, come to Texas. We're starting this PhD program, and I'm going to talk to the chancellor, and you can pay in-state fees. Well, when I came to University of Texas, Dallas in 1980, the in-state fees were $99 a semester. I had a wife and a little kid.
Yeah.
And, uh,
And did you
and
have to like really think about that $99?
Well, I mean, I was working as a teaching assistant, getting
Yeah.
paid $140. But then, I was writing magazine articles in the 80s. I wrote a lot of art criticism and other kinds of things. But in the middle of getting my PhD, my first film premiered in New York. It's called Stoney Knows How. And Stoney was someone I had met when I was 21. He was my first photographic subject. and I was in a folklore class, and he was a hunchback dwarf in a wheelchair, and he gave me his story, and so it's a book that um, is one of the only books of the inside look of the circus, sideshow, and freak show. He was denied an education because he was considered too grotesque to go to school,
Yeah.
to read and write from his grandparents. But Stoney was a mentor to me. I went to see him just about every week for the last 7+ years of his life. In the middle of writing this book about him, I got the idea to make a movie. I got an NEA grant, and the art college where I was teaching um, was a little squeamish about this. And they agreed to be the fiscal agent for my grant on the condition that they never receive a credit in the final film. And the film ended up premiering at Film Forum in New York City in 1981 and showed as part of the new director's series at MoMA. And while by then I had essentially given up ownership of the film to finish it,
Yeah.
uh, it did give me credibility as an artist and as a filmmaker and a writer. So flash forward, my first book was just published in its 40th anniversary edition a year ago. Stoney Knows How, Life as a Sideshow Tattoo Artist. And my film that I made then is still in active distribution over 40 years later.
No kidding. That's amazing. And
So,
it's that's such a sign of the times, and I don't know if it's gotten a lot better, but those people were treated so poorly outside of that sideshow
well,
era,
he was a man of great dignity,
Yeah.
and he was a grandfather figure in a way in my life because my own grandparents had died when I was young. And but he was someone who he knew how to live his life with dignity and self-esteem that a lot of people do not and struggle to find. So I learned a lot of life lessons from Stoney.
Yeah.
And his one request to me before agreeing to let me do this book, because he knew, yeah, I'd never done a nonfiction book. I had started a novel, I was writing poetry, I had a new camera that I got for my 21st birthday. But the condition that he had was that when I die, you write my obituary and publish it at Amusement Business, the trade publication of the circus and carnival trade, but that you identify me as an actor on the outdoor stage, not just a.
Oh, that's cool.
And he was an amazing storyteller. He
Yeah.
was a humorist like Mark Twain. He
That,
was he was a visionary, and for some people, he was like a shaman.
that's amazing. So he was also a tattoo artist as well.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
that's cool.
He had severe rheumatoid arthritis as a child
Yeah.
and gnarled up little hands, but he taught himself to draw and paint, and he was a remarkable tattoo artist. And my film Stoney Knows How is about him. And there's another feature film of mine that includes some outtakes from that movie, plus a lot of other things, called Tattoo Uprising. It was released a few years ago. But this new film is once again issue driven in a different way.
Yeah.
Because partly, I've tended to focus on subjects that are misunderstood or have been subjected for various reasons to cultural bias, people who are marginalized,
Hmm.
and I guess it's because maybe I felt that way too early on.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I can
And
really relate. I was going through some hard times in my life, a lot of change and getting divorced, and a documentary that I came across would like really open my eyes to the everybody's a person kind of thing. and it was called Murder Ball. It
Oh yeah.
is about the American paraplegic rugby team,
Yeah, yeah.
and just the
Yeah.
interviews with them. You're like, these are just every other guy that I've ever spoke. Like it made them like so relatable that it just kind of like really opened my eyes and being like, to not be so judgy, and everyone's got their baggage and we all deal with it in different ways, but it was really enlightening.
Well, I think so much of it is, giving credibility to people who tell or try to tell honest stories about themselves
Yeah,
or that live life in that way. It's so much easier in some sense, but totally difficult and maybe impossible for some people to just accept people for who they are because all the baggage that you bring um, gets in the way. There's a
yeah,
musical of mine that was off Broadway and was also done in France. It's called Texas in Paris. And it's about two performers. One, and this was based on a series of shows that I did in Paris in 1989. It became an off-Broadway musical in 2016. And I think there's licensed productions now of it, but it's basically about these two elderly people. One's an old black woman who'd never been on an airplane before and was a nanny and domestic who sings a cappella spirituals as they
yeah,
were sung by her grandmother when who was 10 years old when slavery ended. And the other was this man, John Burris, who was a cowboy singer, but not in a commercial sense. He was a cowboy who became a horse trainer. He had a little ranch in West Texas, and he sang cowboy songs and country hymns. He'd sing at camp meetings and in the bleachers at rodeos. And so these two people are brought to Paris and by someone who doesn't appear, some guy from Boston,
yeah,
and they have to start talking to each other. They perform on stage together, but even when the French people are speaking English to them, they don't really understand what they're saying. And so they start talking to each other. And it's this difficult conversation that they never thought they could ever have, which was to talk about race and the racism of ignorance
hmm
and the racism of isolation. So there were people that lived in insular worlds trying to talk to each other about what they thought about each other. And it's powerful. And the off-Broadway production starred Lillias White, who was a Tony Award winner. And I wrote that after Ferguson because that's, for me, sadly, that's the state of America.
yeah,
People isolate themselves. There's this whole problem with the coddling of the American mind. And I'm not sure if you know that book, but it's
no,
much speaks for itself. It's basically about, how people, if it doesn't feel good, don't do it. Don't pay
yeah,
attention to it. No, I don't watch the news. It's a downer.
yeah,
Well,
yeah, yeah. I hear that from a lot of people, and
I know. And
yeah,
my response is, don't watch the news. You're going to be the news tomorrow.
yeah.
It's going to change your life, maybe forever.
And it's so
So,
crazy how we can be connected to literally anyone on the planet, but somehow we use that tool to be so isolated by just talking to the people who agree 100% with us.
well, yeah, I mean, that's so much. I used to do a lot of radio work. I did two 52-part radio series that I produced independently, one in 91, 92, and then there was another one in 2010, I think. But these series were on 150 stations. They were little 5-minute evergreen kind of features that took you around the country, the cultures of the world as they're found in America.
Yeah.
And um, I very much enjoyed talking with people where I had no sense of their politics. Or
Hmm.
maybe I did, given where they lived and, the general climate of the day. I mean, the divisiveness today is worse. But,
Yep.
there are people who were just, and it was to focus on that kind of shared interaction. So it's interesting to me how the podcast world has kind of bloomed into that. But I mean, these were tightly little edited pieces, and they took you into different people's life and situations and music and things that they made.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, in to me, it's so important to talk to someone with opposing views in a genuine way, not just to sit and yell at each other. In one of our other shows, we have bar and restaurant people talking about bar and restaurant life. And during the COVID lockdown, I felt like it was getting very um, redundant, and like we were expressing our opinion, but we weren't like getting the other side. And I reached out through Facebook, and we ended up getting someone from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. And their restaurant was open and functioning through the whole thing, and they just had a different opinion. And we came on, and like everyone was very respectful, and it was really great. Didn't change any of my opinions on how things should have been done, but it was a genuine conversation between people trying to understand the other guy and not just yelling at each other. And that's like, I don't feel like we do that.
No, we don't. And there aren't many places that are meeting grounds that way.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of these radio shows that I did were all on location. So they were in neighborhood bars, they were in backyards, they were in living rooms, they were, in different parts of people's lives that and took you into their world for a few minutes. But what you're saying is true. It's very hard to engage in those interactions. I think that in cities, there's more it's more compelling to interact with people.
Yeah.
There's another musical of mine which looks at issues of race and identity and culture. And one of the last, it's a show called Blind Lemon Blues. And that got a lot of response and resonated. But Texas and Paris resonated deeply for people because people could identify with that messaging because it's exactly about what you're talking about. The trouble that people have talking to each other who might have different views and then trying to work through that. That's what that show is about. But,
Yeah.
within the context of music. But one of the most gratifying reviews was from a site called Black Broadway, and he was a young reviewer. He was an actor, and he actually, in the review, said that after seeing the show, he felt like he could talk to somebody he didn't know on the subway.
Oh, that's really cool.
You know,
That's very
that's
cool.
that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
And so, for me, the different art forms that I work in are different ways of expressing that, because I think some things are best said in words, others are can only be communicated through music or maybe by an event or what you're talking about, doing little festivals and things of that sort. I used to organize public free festivals in the 80s. I organized 5 different folk festivals.
Oh, very cool.
And it was always a mix of people, which is what I like. That's what I loved about growing up in the inner city was the
Yeah.
mixed cultures. And fortunately, I had progressive parents. So I got a balanced view in terms of what was happening.
Yeah.
But over the years, it ebbs and flows. And I think we just have to keep doing what we believe in. That's going
Well,
to
now
make
more than ever,
now
it's
more than ever.
yeah.
Exactly. So uh, it's been really good meeting you. I mean, this is a good
Yeah. I feel like we just scratched the surface, and I'm looking at the clock. I'm like, we're already at like 40 minutes.
I know.
But
Yeah.
that's why I do this, and I know I've said this 1,000 times, so I'm sure our listeners are sick of it. But my favorite podcasts are when a stranger comes in and a friend leaves. Like that's my favorite thing.
Well, and that's so much of just having a conversation. That's a lot of all my work begins in conversations.
Yeah.
I mean, and then it takes different forms in media. But if I may, if your listeners want to find out more,
Oh yeah,
they
I was just gonna do that. You got ahead of me.
go to documentariarts.org. We have a website for this movie, Quiet Voices in a Noisy World.org. But all of the radio shows that I mentioned are on mastersoftraditionalarts.org. And then there's an online magazine, the Documentary Arts, the organization I founded in 1985, has established, called truthinphotography.org. And it was developed in association with Magnum Photos, the International Center of Photography, and Aperture. So if you check out those sites, you'll get a deeper sense of what I do.
Yeah.
But the key one is documentariarts.org. There you see just about everything. There's everything as it's known today.
Is Stanley Knows How available there?
Who is that?
Is your Stanley Knows How, that documentary?
Stoney.
Sorry. Can't read my own handwriting. Sorry, Stoney.
Stoney knows how's there. Links to how to get it. I mean, I've published over 40 books,
Yeah.
and there's more than there's about 24 of my movies on Amazon Prime.
Oh, outstanding.
So there's a lot there to explore, and I appreciate your interest, and this has been a pleasure.
Oh, thank you so much. And we will definitely want you back on the show because, like I said, I feel like we just scratched the surface here. With a career like yours, I mean, I feel like we could do a whole podcast about you. But thank you so much for taking the time, and I'm definitely going to check those. I'm a big documentary fan, so I'm going to check those out. And
how do I archive your podcast? Is that possible?
This episode or the whole thing?
No, the whole thing. But I mean, just this episode too.
Well, we could send you this episode, but you can pretty much go to anywhere where there are where they have podcasts, and you can find all the episodes. And so,
I mean, I'm just learning about the podcast world. So
some are better than others. The nice thing about it. My favorite thing about podcasting is it's very much a figure it out as you go. So the early ones have some real severe sound issues because we didn't know what we were doing. But, I've gotten to talk to some amazing people. For our 400th episode, my two kids interviewed me, which was super fun. Yeah. So it's been a trip, and it's always funny because we've done so many that my producer has met people who have been on the podcast who he's met before and doesn't remember meeting them because we've done so many. It's very funny.
Well, it's the way of the world.
Yeah.
Keep it up. All
Thank
right.
you. Yeah, you too. And again, anytime you have anything going on, please feel free to reach out. I'd love to have you back.
Okay. Thanks so much.
Thank you. And listeners, we'll see you guys again next week.
And thanks for checking out the show today, listeners. If you enjoyed the content today, you can go over to patreon.com/Inebri-art to support the show. You can join over there for just a few dollars a month and help us provide this fun content that you just checked out. You can also email us at Inebri-art.com with your questions, complaints, and concerns, or you can find us on all social medias at Inebri-art or at Inebri-art6 on Instagram. And also don't forget to check out our other shows, Bar Talk Podcast, Old Colony Cast, Inebri-art, and all the other shows on the Inebri-art Network, which you can find at Inebri-art.com. Thanks again for listening.